but the recording will be sent out to students. So yeah, I think any insights we get tonight will be really valuable. So thank you everyone for coming to the Law and Advocacy panel as part of the USC Industry Insights series. My name is Alex. I'm a second year public policy student here at USC, and I'm really excited to hear from our panelists, and hopefully it'll provide some great insights into the law and advocacy fields. So our agenda for tonight, we'll start with introductions of all of our panelists. Then we'll go into a little panel discussion moderated by me, student Q&A, and then we'll have some closing remarks. So let's jump right in. If each of the panelists could introduce themselves, tell us a little about your job and kind of what you do. So we'll start with Jessica.
Hi, everyone. I do apologize. I cannot get my video to work on Zoom. So sorry for that. Hopefully it kicks in at some point. Anyways, my name is Jessica Monsuela. I am legal counsel compliance at FIFA World Cup 2026. So a subsidiary of FIFA, the governing body for football. So we're primarily in charge of putting on the upcoming World Cup. And my focus in the organization is our compliance program, conflicts of interest, anti-bribery, and gifts hospitality. So sanctions, all of that nature of legal compliance, plus a bit more.
Stacy?
Hi, everyone. My name is Stacy Chu. I am a senior associate in the Labor and Employment Department at K&L Gates. We are an international firm, I believe, across 5 or 6 countries, 22 offices. I am based in the LA office. So I do a lot of management side employment litigation. So defending companies like Walmart or CVS against wage and hour class actions, and then also providing advice and counsel for HR folks, people folks with questions like, hey, I have an employee going out on pregnancy disability leave. What should I do? So a wide range of stuff in employment.
I guess I'm next. Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley Vasquez. I graduated from USC undergrad in 2018, and I now live in Washington, D.C. I work as a trial attorney for the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Most of what I do is fair housing compliance. That's like policy work and casework when somebody files a charge saying that they've been discriminated against in their housing. We investigate the claim, litigate it before administrative law judges. And yeah, it's pretty rewarding work.
Good evening, everyone. Bo Goodrick. I'm an attorney at Owen Patterson and Owen. We do plaintiffs' personal injury work, and so I'm sure that everybody sees the, Sweet James billboards or, Call Jacob and all of those. And so I do that, but on a less shiesty, level, as I like to say. Prior to doing plaintiff's personal injury, I, like Ashley, lived in Washington, D.C., and I worked for a big firm out there doing patent litigation. And so I went from a firm of 500 attorneys to a firm of 5 attorneys. So kind of ran the gamut there, but I look forward to talking with y'all.
Hi, my name is Janelle Price. I work in child welfare law, and what that is when parents or guardians have been accused of abusing or neglecting their children, they come into a civil system and potentially a criminal system as well. I'm on the civil side. And for 26 years, I worked for the county counsel's office representing social services agency, essentially the government agency that came in to seek removal of children from their home because of abuse or neglect. I retired 4 years ago and I switched to my own practice, and I still have some trial practice now on the defense side and an appellate practice as well for both children and parents.
Hi, everyone. My name's Amadi Jordan Walker. I graduated from USC's law school, and I'm now based in Chicago. I work for a affordable housing real estate developer here in Chicago and do sort of a hybrid role of project management and in-council work. So I work a lot with acquiring and rehabbing affordable properties around the country.
Thank you. And that'll lead us into our moderated question and answer section of tonight. Any of the panelists, if you guys have special insights you want to share, feel free to answer these questions. And our first question is, what inspired you to pursue a career in law, and how do you continue to find value in your work?
How do you want to do this, Alex? Anybody can jump in, or I'm happy to work with however you want to work it.
Yeah, I think we can just go in order of how we introduce ourselves. So if you guys want to do it that way, I think that'll be good.
Okay, then I will start off. So I actually switched from pre-med to law school in my third year at USC. So I actually have my degree from the Keck School of Medicine. Yeah, I didn't feel like med was the way to go. I had always an interest in justice and fairness and maybe in ethics. Maybe that's why I'm in compliance now. So that kind of led me to a career in law. And how do I find value in what I do? I think helping. I think people don't associate the law necessarily with helping people all the time. They kind of tend to see the negative of lawyers, of suing or pursuing things. But the reality is, we're here to help, whether it's in a corporate setting, whether it's litigating, whether you're a defense attorney or not. So there is value in what we do, upholding our laws and essentially trying to do the right thing.
Hi everyone, it's Stacey. I also have a similar background. I was also pre-med. I think there's a lot of us that have that pre-med law crossover. I was pre-med in undergrad, wasn't totally ready to go to med school after I graduated. So I actually moved to Central America and I lived in Honduras for 3 years, working with nonprofits focused on women's development. And I think that work and sort of living in a country where the legal system was not protecting anybody was really eye-opening. And I think it made me realize that laws and having a strong legal framework in a country is really important. So came back to the United States, enrolled in law school, and now I'm here. And I continue to find value in my work because I do a lot of counseling for companies. And as I'm getting older, a lot of my friends are moving up in the ranks in companies or starting their own companies. So it's really rewarding to work with my friends to make sure that they're protecting their investments, they're protecting their employees, they're setting everything up correctly. So it's really nice to be able to do that.
So I graduated from USC the year that Oprah spoke at Annenberg's graduation. And the thing that Oprah always tells people is to think about where you can be the most useful. When I was in college, I thought that was journalism, but after spending 3.5 years running around LA, interviewing a lot of different people, writing their stories about homelessness and all these, societal ills, I came to the conclusion that being a lawyer would be the thing that would help me take a more active role in creating the systemic change that I wanted to see in the world. So, today the work that I do day to day helps redress a lot of those harms for people who have suffered discrimination in the place where they expect to feel the most safe in their homes. And then long term, there are a lot of policies that we're putting in place to make sure that over time, local governments don't keep perpetuating existing patterns of segregation. And I see that as a win for the person I was at USC who wanted to change the world and wasn't sure how.
My story is slightly different. I graduated from USC in 2013 with a degree in mechanical engineering from Viterbi, and I decided after interning in college with engineering companies that I didn't like engineering very much, and that's not what I wanted to do. I had a head start because both of my parents are attorneys, and so I knew what they did, and I knew what the kind of work that they did, and who they helped and that kind of thing. And so I was like, oh, I can do this whole law thing. So I went to law school but with an engineering background, I could specialize in intellectual property litigation or patent litigation, which they usually like people having science backgrounds. Unlike Stacy said, there are not a lot of people who have engineering degrees with science backgrounds. And so that was a very like niche field. So you're dealing with the same people over and over. I did that for a couple years, and I did not was value in my work. I did not find very much value in my work. They found value in my time, so I got paid a lot to just be on call all the time, and I decided that that was not what I wanted to do, and I felt like a cog in a wheel that was just pushing paper for mostly Chinese companies, which is fine, but like I just didn't. I was not well, I was not getting joy out of that. And so now I work at a much smaller firm. I work on behalf of people. Everything that I do every day is argue with insurance companies that they're not, valuing my clients' injuries enough. Clients now say thank you. I never had a company ever say thank you once. Stacy's smiling, so she might know too. And so that's how I find joy now is I work hard, and when I get a good result for a client, then they're beneficial and their life is changed. And so that's a lot more how I get it now. But I had to work to find that even within law, as opposed to going to the law to find that enjoyment.
And so I have a little bit different story. I actually came into law because I grew up in a very abusive household. My dad died when I was young, and my mom remarried a monster, for lack of a better term. And I decided when I was little that I was going to be a judge to protect children. But I grew up in a very blue collar, non-educated family. And somebody told me, well, you have to be a lawyer before you're a judge. And I'm like, okay, I'll do that. So that's why I went to law school. That's also how I ended up in child welfare for the past 30 some odd years. To date myself, I graduated from USC Law the year that the Rodney King riots happened. And I retired from Orange County Counsel's office the year the pandemic hit for different reasons. I had a kid who was at home trying to homeschool herself, and life was chaotic. And so I had great value and enjoyment in working for Children and Family Services, protecting children. I wore the white hat. I made sure that they weren't abused like my siblings and I were. I made sure that they had safe places to go, whether that be, relatives or foster care or back with their families. So when I retired, I was a little bit in a crisis mode because I was used to being that person. But then I discovered the joys of private practice, and now most of my clientele are victims of domestic violence. And they have a very unique need because they are often not only abused by their partners, but also when they come into the system for not being strong enough, not being protective enough, and then later for being too pushy and too protective. So my value and my joy now comes from watching these people, both men and women, but predominantly women statistically, grow from being a shattered human that can't take care of themselves, let alone their children, into regaining their children back in their custody, being able to give back and be a good parent. And so it's been kind of a 180 turn, but it's been a lot of fun.
I'm kind of embarrassed to say that I went to law school because I didn't know what else I wanted to do. But I graduated with an English degree. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to work in media. And when I kind of worked in that field for a bit, I felt like I wasn't making the impact that I thought I could. So I started working for a community development nonprofit, and that kind of inspired me to get into affordable housing and get a law degree to help me further my advocacy and other skills to make an impact there. So how I was able to find a job with a affordable housing developer, learn a lot of skills in terms on the legal side and also on management side, and make a difference by preserving much needed affordable housing and building affordable housing around the country.
You all for that. That kind of leads me into our second question, and this kind of applies to me as well, but for members of the audience who are completely unfamiliar with the field of law and are really just starting out, what does the day-to-day of being a lawyer look like?
Okay. I think the day-to-day will just kind of differ depending on what field you're in. In my case, it's very different every day I walk into the office because I deal with compliance. I can get different issues flagged up, whether it's just a personal relationship at work, our standard conflicts of interest. I'll have to review those and clear those, providing training to our new hires. Any new policy issue, if there's something changing, I usually work closely with our workforce team. So if we need to think on our feet, we're moving into a new state, register. So I also do a lot of tax support. I have a tax LLM, so registering for SUTA tax and just getting the business ready to do business in those states. So it really is reactive to whatever the business kind of brings me. I don't really deal with commercial contracts at this time. Uh, there's other people within the team who primarily handle those, but if needed, I can jump in and vet an IC, an independent contractor. So it's very diverse. I've been in roles where I was doing the same thing over and over, primary litigation. When you're in litigation, you tend to have the same churn, filing motions and depositions. And so it's very much the same. I didn't like that. So I kind of like being in-house GC where I don't know what the day is necessarily going to bring me. You go in with an agenda and it can change. So that's kind of my day to day. I would say generally resolving issues is what I consider my job to be.
So I work in a law firm, and my day to day is determined half by the court schedule. So when I handle a lot of like lawsuits. So the deadlines will be set by the court, like, hey, you have to file a response to the lawsuit by X day. So I'll know months in advance, like these couple of weeks, I'm going to be drafting a response, or these couple of weeks, I need to, interview some witnesses to get the documents ready to be filed. So that's the litigation side. And then there's also the advice and counsel side, which is a little bit more exciting. So again, I have a bunch of companies that just have my number and call me at any time. So on any given day, especially Friday around like between 3 and 5 p.m., I get so many calls from clients because they've like gone through their whole work week, and at the last minute, they're like, oh, I need to call my lawyer to ask this one question. So my Friday afternoons are actually really busy. I'll get random calls throughout the day or emails from clients asking things like, we have someone who just turned in a doctor's note, they need an accommodation, or we want to terminate somebody, or we're shutting down half the plant. What should we do? So I always leave room in my schedule for those random emergencies that pop up. So it's nice. I have a balance of like things that I know will get done at a certain time, and then other things that are just exciting and happen day to day.
So I'm not somebody who is in court all the time. I'm somebody who is usually working from home. And I think the difference between like my job and a lot of other legal jobs is that I have a lot of work-life balance, especially for someone early in their career. There's a lot of constraints on how much you can work as a federal employee. So yeah, my job is 9 to 5, work from home. But it is different every day, depending on what I'm doing. If I'm helping an investigator with a civil rights case, I'm helping them figure out what information they need to collect in order to meet the legal definition of discrimination under a bunch of different civil rights laws. Sometimes I'm negotiating settlements, drafting up the charges of discrimination, and if it gets to that stage, litigating in front of administrative law judges. There have been random things that come in, like maybe there's a Supreme Court case that deals with housing and civil rights. And in that case, I would be meeting with the Department of Justice and sharing what the Department of Housing's perspective is and advising them on whether I think they should intervene on behalf of the government. Sometimes I help draft civil rights regulations, which are interpreting the law. My office also reviews every single thing that the Department of Housing does to make sure it's complying with the civil rights laws. So that's a lot of what my day-to-day is. Sometimes I also advise staff or members of Congress when there's an idea for a bill, but they haven't exactly fleshed out how that would work in practice. So yeah, there's just a lot of random things that come in. So every day is a little different.
For what I do right now, similar to what Jessica said, because I work in litigation, everything is pretty set up. The steps to follow are generally the same. The deadlines are generally the same, and you know all of them in advance. So while I don't have great work-life balance, at least I can plan ahead which is huge. So knowing, okay, cool, this case isn't going to settle. It's likely going to be in trial. I know that I reported ready for trial yesterday. So the second half of this month was supposed to be, just absolutely gone. And now all of a sudden it's not. And so, with that, being able to plan, but it's really just, taking depositions and drafting discovery and responding to discovery. And it's really just kind of the same things over and over. What's different is the fact patterns. And so it will surprise nobody here that one of the most common ways to get injured in Los Angeles is being rear-ended. There are more rear-end collisions in this county than any other county in the country. And it's the number one way people get injured. Well, there's only so many ways to argue a rear end collision. And so, once you've made it through those, it becomes much more rote. There are only a couple ways that people generally get injured in those. And so sometimes you have, weirder ways that people get injured that throws a little bit more interest into it, in terms of something new or different. But for the most part, a lot of what we handle is stuff that we've handled before, and we have systems and processes in place to do that. So that makes that a lot easier. And just for, again, just trying to give everybody the most kind of information as possible. At my old job, it was also very litigation heavy, and so it was still, similar. But I had no control over my schedule at all. It was the partners above me decided everything, and so I did not work, like Ashley said, 9 to 5. I got into the office at 9:30, and I was there until they didn't need me anymore. And that could have been at any time. And so just to show that even within litigation, depending on the firm or what you're doing, your day-to-day could be totally different depending on the stuff that you're working on or who you're working for or with.
So my first 26 years, I was a trial attorney, which is different than litigation. And people that are not in the legal practice don't understand the difference. But I would go up to the courtroom every day with a stack of files, anywhere between 28 and maybe 40 cases on in any given day. I did not know which case was going to trial until the judge told me at about 10 o'clock, maybe 11 o'clock. So all of our contests had to be prepared. Our witnesses had to be lined up. Our evidence had to be subpoenaed, and we had to be ready to go. That was 5 days a week. So when do you prepare? You prepare at night or over the lunch hour or early in the morning. And as a trial attorney, the schedule is predictable that you're going to be in court from 8:30 until 5, sometimes 4:30. But other than that, there's no predictability and it's chaos. And so for those of you that thrive on adrenaline, it's a great job. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. When I moved to my retirement and then switched to private practice, I balance appellate work and trial work. My trials are now scheduled. As a defense attorney, I know when my case is going to be on. It doesn't mean that I know that it's going to go forward. So again, I have to be fully prepared walking in at 8:30 as if everything's going to go to trial that day. And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. My appellate process or practice is a little different. Those are scheduled due dates. They're usually, when you get a new case, you have about 30 days to file the appeal. And then hopefully the respondent will file something within 30, and then you have 20 more days to respond. What throws a couple monkey wrenches in that is if the Court of Appeal or what I had happen last week, the Supreme Court says, hey, we have a question and we want this addressed and we want it addressed within 4 days. So that kind of throws a little bit of pressure into my life that I didn't otherwise anticipate. But generally, appellate work is a lot slower because you have to dot your I's and cross your T's. I do most of my work from home on my appeals. Obviously, I don't for my trial work. If you like research, if you like really intellectualizing things and splitting hairs, appellate work is amazing for that. But it doesn't give you the same adrenaline rush that trial work does. And trial work was a lot of fun. It still is, but it was a lot of fun on the government side just because of the sheer volume and oddly enough, not knowing what you're going to face that day. I thought that was a little bit of fun. So I know I'm a little weird that way.
So as I mentioned, I have sort of a hybrid role, but on my in-house counsel's hat, my day can consist of reviewing a lot of documents. So sitting and reviewing partnership agreements for the ownership structure, putting together org charts and forming entities, putting together operating agreements, those kind of things, looking at title, reviewing surveys, and I can't complain about work-life balance. It's pretty good from usually 8:30 to 5, not many weekends. But once we get closer to a closing, it gets a bit more hectic and you're working a little bit longer hours just to get a deal to the finish line. So it's pretty high paced, and there's always something new that you're learning. But from the in-house counsel side, I think it's a little less pressure than at a law firm.
Thank you. And I think with your responses, I've been able to see like all the different ways that the different legal fields and specializations differ. So I want to move on to our next question and ask what skills or qualities are most important to succeed in law school and then as a practicing lawyer?
I would say for law school, probably writing. The way you have to write, law school comes down to usually one exam. Each class has one exam, sometimes two. And a lot of it is being able to identify the issue and properly respond. In some cases, you have professors that are very particular. They do not want long answers. So you have to learn how to convey the message in a short way. So I think that's, to me, was one of the biggest things. If you're not fond of writing, you're not a great writer, don't feel you are, I think you have to kind of prepare. There is a class, or there was a class at USC while I was there that was like writing for lawyers. So that was the one class I took to prepare to go into law school. And it was very helpful to start to think in a different way, that IRAC framework. And of course, there's like the logic behind it and analytical thinking, but it is a bit different, law school versus practice. In practice, just to be solution oriented. As a corporate in-house attorney, you're not necessarily kind of so strictly tied to what's there. You're trying to find a solution. You're trying to be compliant with the law. You're trying to assess risk for the business, understanding how you can comply. Is it feasible? I worked for a lot of startups. I worked in international settings. So like the risk that businesses are willing to take on is different. You're there to advise and tell them what they should do, what they shouldn't do. But at the end of the day, the business might take certain risks. So you're an advisor. You want them to trust you. So it's a very different kind of mentality when you're going into the corporate attorney versus law school. You're obviously trying to stick to the law, present issues, and resolve that in a different way. Also, communicating is different. Practicing, you usually are dealing, at least in my setting, I think most of us probably, with lay people who don't understand the law. So it's not about citing statutes or being complex. So you need to learn to communicate in a very easy to understand way. Because if you want people to really follow the law or kind of side with you, get behind you, they really need to understand what you're saying and what you're asking them to do. And it needs to be kind of attainable. So that's just one way I generally think of practicing, just trying to gain people's trust and be an advisor to them. At least that's helped me succeed in my corporate health settings. I think that's it for my end. I heard what everyone else has to say.
I agree with Jessica. I feel like in law school, there's a lot of reading, a lot of writing, a lot of like processing information, understanding laws, applying it to fact patterns. So I agree. If you don't like writing a lot, then I don't know, maybe things will be different with AI, but there's a lot of writing, a lot of reading. And then after you get out of law school, I think what I could add to practicing the law, especially in the law firm environment where we have clients, it is a service industry type of job. My job is to make my clients, look good in front of their bosses, make sure they're giving them the right advice so that they can protect their employees and do their jobs right. And that sometimes that means answering calls at 7 p.m. on a Friday night, or if there's an employee emergency that happens over the weekend, being available for my clients then. And then also being really responsive and, like Jessica said, explaining things really clearly to them. What else? I think also just being able to manage your time really well. I do have a lot of autonomy in terms of my day-to-day work. Apart from like getting the crazy calls from clients, it's really up to me to move the case along to keep people updated. So really building up good time management skills, learning to prioritize properly, and then also like learning to give myself time to take a break, go outside and have a walk, and learning when I need to recharge and pull back is, I think, also really important.
I agree with everything that's been said. So I'll just add maybe some of the softer skills. I think for law school, you really have to have a willingness to be uncomfortable. Law school really thrives on this idea that you only grow when you're pushed. So you have to be, have humility in knowing that you're not going to be the smartest person in the room, but also have an openness to learning from different perspectives, as well as like confidence in sharing your own perspective when you are pushed. That's something that can really rattle people when they're not prepared for the law school environment. And in terms of being a lawyer, I think people skills and conflict resolution will carry you a long way. There's a lot, there's like definitely a stereotype of like an abrasive lawyer, but that's not what you need to succeed. A lot of being a good person and being someone people want to work with will carry you a long way in this profession.
I think that a lot of great things have been said. I also want to apologize if you can either see or hear my puppy behind me. And he's been attacking this octopus for most of the day. So I apologize for that. Um, Law school teaches you how to think. That's their whole idea is they teach you how to approach problems. And so similar to what Jessica said, that allows you to put it into legal writing in that way. Um, Thankfully for me, engineering also teaches you how to think and how to approach problems. And so when I got to law school, I didn't have to learn that part that everybody else had to learn. And so that was a huge leg up. But what I didn't learn was the communication of that. And so when I knew how to approach the problem, I knew how to address the problem and hey, here's where we need to, be looking. Because that's step one is figuring out, okay, these are the issues that I got to deal with. Um, Step two is communicating those issues and how to deal with them to whoever you have to talk to. And so going a little bit back to the last question in terms of day to day, a lot of what I'm doing is taking injured clients' claims and presenting them to insurance companies and insurance adjusters who, again, are predisposed to tell me that my client's not actually that injured. And so I have to communicate with them about why they're wrong or why my client is as injured as they're claiming. And so that has to do with putting together a good demand package that has the evidence that's supporting the things I have to say. And similar to what Ashley said, if I start like yelling when they get back to me with a crappy offer, well, then why would they want to call me and continue the negotiations? That's not going to help anything. And similarly, going the other direction, I have to be able to communicate with clients who are just random people who got injured about the intricacies of the law and why, the trial keeps getting pushed out because that's how, trial works in a lot of cases. But unfortunately, clients don't understand that. And so it's really the communication aspect has easily been both the biggest learning curve for me, but also the most useful because whether you're communicating with your boss, which is going to be relevant regardless of what you do in law or otherwise, or with the opposing counsel who you're going to see again. Like a lot of times you see the same people over and over. And so, your reputation follows you. And so it's really the communication aspect of both dealing with opposing counsel and adjusters in terms of being respectful, but also forceful and, holding to your ground if you feel like you're right. But then similarly, representing those things to clients who are complete lay people and have no familiarity with the law, and you might be the only lawyer they know. And so you can't use your normal, lingo that you use with all of your lawyer friends because everybody has, the same common understanding. And so really, I think it's the willingness to learn but really it's the ability to communicate and how learnable that is and how useful that is in pretty much every aspect.
I spent a lot of time in our office training the new hires when they came in because they would come in wanting to do trial work. And they would lack critical thinking skills. So I think the most important thing, both to help you get through law school and also your career, is to be able to critically consider the information that you're given, be able to take it apart, look at it from another perspective, turn it around, and see it from all sides. And that it takes practice, like Bo had indicated. It's not a way that we normally think. So anything that you can do to start getting you into that critical thinking mode to learn how to learn, I think is incredibly helpful. The second thing that I think is important is integrity. And people say, well, lawyers are slimy, they don't have integrity, but we do, and we're required to. And there's a new rule regarding civility that is being implemented in 2025. And so even though you're supposed to be an advocate for your client, you have to be civil about it. So going in, pounding on the table and screaming, it never works. It just doesn't. It alienates the judge, the jury, and your opposing counsel. Being firm, like Bo said, is necessary, but not being a jerk. So you have to be civil, have some integrity, be good for your word. Because if you give somebody your word and you break your promise or you break your word, you're going to ruin that relationship, that professional relationship, for a good long time, if not forever. So you have to make sure that your word is gold. What you say, you mean, and what you mean, you say. And the other thing that I think is important is authenticity. We all have different personalities. And when you work with different attorneys, you realize that the person next to you could be just as successful and knowledgeable as you, but they're completely different. They're either extroverted or introverted or a completely different personality. But you have to be authentic to who you are, because that's where you're going to succeed. That's where you're going to rise above, because you're going to be happy in what you're doing. You're going to be able to connect with the people that you're working for and the people you represent. There's a difference between belonging, which is what you seek to have, and fitting in, which means you kind of force yourself to kind of fit into a group that you may not necessarily mesh with. Seek to belong, seek to have some authenticity and enjoy what you're doing, no matter what type of practice you're in, because I think that goes a long ways in providing excellent representation for your client.
I don't think there's much more I could add. I guess I'll go from a practical standpoint of, I think it's important to be really organized and detail oriented in your work. There's so many things you're juggling as a lawyer, and so many different issues you're working with. So making sure to be organized in what you're in your work and being detail oriented in what you do, while also being efficient, is important to make sure you're doing the best for your clients and for yourself.
Thank you all. So you guys had talked about all the different skills and things that have really helped you guys during your careers. So how can students prepare themselves for law school and a career during their time in college? Might it be through internships, club involvements, classes, research, or are there other participations that you guys think might be valuable for someone going to law school?
Should we switch the order for the panel and go reverse this time?
Sure, I think it would add something.
That wasn't prepared. So I think, as I mentioned, I didn't know I wanted to go to law school. So when I was especially when I was in undergrad. So I just studied and worked hard in the field, or in the major that I chose, which was English, and did all the things that I wanted to do and was interested in. And I think if you work hard, you have to have the grades, you have to do relatively well on the LSAT to get into law school, and you're passionate about what you do, then you can find your niche and find your way in law school. And I don't think any particular class or extracurricular will prepare you for that. But saying that, if you are interested right now, maybe get into student government, take public policy. I think English was a good background in terms of writing, even though it's a different type of writing. So just be well-rounded in what you do as an undergrad student.
So I'm really far removed from school. And back when I went to school, we didn't have internships, really. I mean, you got a job during the summertime, but we didn't have internship opportunities. We didn't have a career center that was as robust as you guys have right now. So I had to talk to my daughter, who's a sophomore at Berkeley, and she is studying pre-law as well. And I asked her, what does she see her successful friends, her seniors and her older friends, what does she see of value? She belongs to a pre-law fraternity. They do moot court, they do oral arguments, they do research papers, they do interviewing techniques. She thinks that is really helpful. But it's not the end all if you don't get in a certain pre-law frat or if you don't get in one at all. She suggested just to find your group. She said when there are panel presentations put on by any student group that interests you, go and listen to them. They're free, and go and talk to the speakers afterwards, because we all know, especially with USC, connections matter. That networking really, really matters when you get out into the practice. She suggested to make sure that you're comfortable with public speaking. So anytime you get the opportunity to join some sort of club that would put you in a position of speaking to the public, do that, because that's going to help you both with your communication and also if you are a trial attorney and you have to be in front of a tribunal. So she said that all of the above, including internships, are important. She said in Berkeley, they sometimes hand down internships. So if you're interested in a certain area of law or a certain job, and then you have connections within that, then you're able to meet that hiring team early before that recruitment even starts. And so she said that internship programs do, paid or unpaid, offer invaluable connections. And it also teaches people that they may not really like what they think they're going into. Like a couple of the panelists thought they were going to be in medicine, and they decided that's really not what they want. Well, you may think that, well, for example, I thought that I wanted to be in a big law firm until I realized that that's not the life I wanted to live. I wanted to help children, but I was also kind of wooed by the big money of law firms. And when I started speaking to those people, I realized that I'm not a fit there. That's not a fit for me. So anything that's open to you, that you enjoy, that you can commit to, I would strongly recommend.
I just want to reiterate that Janelle's advice was killer. Like that was all of that was such great advice because I had written down, you need to figure out what you like doing. If you don't like writing, well, then there are certain parts of law that you're not going to like regardless of what you're writing about. If you don't like speaking in front of people, well, then you're not going to like being a trial attorney, probably. So you need to figure out what you like, and from there you can narrow it down. For me, once I determined, okay, I don't want to work for companies, I want to work for people. Okay, well, that narrows it down dramatically in terms of what I want to do, and then I could do it from there. And so, with an engineering background, for me, again, it was like I like systems. I like being able to put together systems, and I work in a phenomenal field for systems. And so, like, even if the joy I'm getting isn't necessarily from the every single law related aspect, I'm getting it, more broadly. Similarly, to follow on what Janelle said, I was not in a pre-law fraternity, I was in a regular fraternity. But you still deal with conflict resolution, you deal with leadership skills, you deal with people getting good jobs, you deal with jealousy and envy, like you still deal with all of those things. And so you might not be, as specifically professionally based, but the end result is still creating a network of a lot. I mean, you guys are at USC, like a lot of people who end up being remarkably successful, and can help you in their own ways or in, your field. But mostly just talk to lawyers. And if you talk to all of them and every single lawyer tells you about their job and you think that that sucks, well then, like, one, try finding some other lawyers who do some other things, but like it also might not be for you. And that's not a bad thing. By doing internships or externships or just reaching out, I mean, one of the ways that I was able to create a great network was I just cold emailed people. And are you going to get a 100% response rate? Of course not. But it's a numbers game too. So if you come up with one standard email that you just switch out the name and the name of the firm, like you'll get pretty good responses. And the reality is like, I mean, I feel confident about this because my sister just started her first year of law school and I just gave her all of this advice too. So at least I'm being, intellectually consistent. People say that you have to go the extra mile. You don't have to go the extra mile. You only have to go the extra couple of inches because most everybody else is trying to do the minimum amount possible to skip by. And so if you send out one email a week to a practitioner who does a different type of thing, well, then at the end of the year, you might have a group of 50 practitioners in 50 different parts of law that nobody else has. And so just by putting a little bit of consistency in there, you have no idea what doors that can open. My first year of law school, I worked at the Department of Energy in Washington, D.C. That was where my internship was. And I knew I wanted to go back to D.C. for work, and I knew I wanted to do intellectual property. I went on, so for big law, a lot of times I'll talk about like the AmLaw 100, which is, the 100 biggest firms in the country or world, or, whatever, however they do it. Most of those firms you can sort by where the attorneys graduated from. So I can tell you that if somebody graduated from USC and worked in Washington, D.C., they got an email from me that summer. And did I meet with all of them? No, of course not. Did they all get back to me? No, of course not. But some did. And some I still have a relationship with that I still keep updated. Some random ones, that I found that weren't USC people, but instead were patent litigation people, got back to me, and I didn't do any research on them until after they got back to me, and I found out, I was like, man, this guy is the chairman of one of the top 10 firms in the world, and he just responded to my cold email saying, hey, I'm an intellectual property law student looking for advice. And so now when I had, Janelle was talking about appeals, I argued an appeal a couple years ago. Well, I went to him because he's argued like 85 cases in front of the Supreme Court. So like he's probably pretty good at it. And so being able to reach out to people like that and know, learn what they do, determine whether that's something that you would like doing or not. And even if it's something that you realize it's not something that you want to do, that's useful information too, because now you can check that part off. And so I would just talk to as many people as you can, because they're going to be the ones that are going to give you the insight that you're looking for. Nobody can say, you're going to love the law, because nobody knows that except you. And so the reality is you need to talk to as many people as you can until you find either what it is you're going to like or how it is you want to utilize your law degree. One of my best friends from law school works for Skydance Studios and negotiates contracts for them in a position that you don't need to be a lawyer to be. But like he gets to do it and he loves it, and that's what he wanted to do. And he talked to people and got his way in. And so I would just talk to as many people as you can, and you don't have to work that much harder than everybody else to vastly outpace people in terms of the network that you have. And I'll close with this. As you talk to those people, one of the best advice one of the best pieces of advice that I've gotten, just go there looking for information. Not all of these people are looking to hire necessarily. And so what I was told is that if you go asking for a job, you'll get advice. But if you go looking for advice, they will try and find a job for you, because they're like, man, this person really cares and they want to learn all about this, and this is what they want to do, and I want to help them. And then all of a sudden you'll have these people who you barely know and you barely had lunch with asking for your resume so that they can pass it along. And so it's one of those things where it a reinforcing cycle that will allow you to continue getting ahead of people and helping you find where you want to be and what it is that you want to do.
I don't have that much to add. I would just reiterate the perspective that you need to talk to a lot of different types of lawyers. The job that I do now, I had no idea existed when I was an undergrad. When I was in college, I was the first in my family to go to college. I didn't know any lawyers. So a lot of what I was doing was trying to figure out, if I'm thinking about this seriously, is it something I want to have as much information as possible to have a very clear picture of what being a lawyer is going to look like before I commit another 3 years? Because I was someone who could never even picture going to college, much less another 3 years of schooling. So I was, I was in Phi Alpha Delta. I was in a pre-law fraternity. I did a lot of internships. I did the UCLA Law Fellows program. I took a lot of classes that had a legal component to them. And I talked to a lot of different types of lawyers. And there were a lot of different conflicting things that I heard. Because I was a journalism student, the focus was, your grades are important, but what's more important is your internships and your networking. And then I was in the law fraternity, and that was, grades are the only thing that matter. If you get an A-, consider dropping the class. If you don't get into a top 20, law school isn't worth it. Being a lawyer is miserable, don't do it. So everybody has a different perspective, and you need to figure out a way to know who you are and have as many experiences to figure out if what they're saying is true for them is what's going to be true for you. But a lot of that is doing the research and talking to people in a lot of different career paths.
I agree. I feel like all advice so far has been amazing. I love going second to last because now I can just add my own little tidbit. um, I think I would add a couple of things. One, it's totally fine if you are listening to us and you're like a senior and you're like, I didn't do any pre-law classes. I'm not a poli-sci major. I am so screwed. I'm behind. I would not worry. I had absolutely no idea I was going to go to law school, did none of that stuff until like 3 years after college. And I would say kids who did like intern at a law clerk at a law firm or had some sort of legal background, I'd say they had a small step up at the beginning. They kind of like understood the terms, but nothing really prepares you for law school and learning that whole methodology of like how to think and stuff. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. I would say though, as someone who is pre-med and is horrible at science and math, that there you should like really like find out what you're good at and what you enjoy, because I was basically forcing myself to go through all of these classes, like staying up all night trying to figure out like how to get by, when I think if I had just paid closer attention to being like, hey, like this might not be the thing for you. What you're really good at is reading and writing. And let's try and like focus on like finding a way to like make those skills really shine. I think that would have been probably a more productive 4 years of college, but it is what it is. And I think at the end of the day, all the experiences that you go through, if you end up going to law school, I feel like they all help you become a better attorney, whether it's the pre-law society or it's pre-med, or for me, I spent 3 years in another country in the mountains. But I think all of that really helps you become a better attorney, because I think, as a bunch of people mentioned, we do have to deal with a lot of different situations, high emotions, a lot of pressure, and what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger.
Okay, I'm last. I think what everyone said is great. I took a completely different path. I do not personally like to network. It's hard for me to reach out. I'm a bit shy and an introvert, except when it comes to representing my clients, representing my stakeholders. So when it comes to me, I tend to kind of try to figure things out myself, which is not great. So I would follow everyone else said. It's great to network. I have my best friend who loves to network, and I see what it brings to her. Personally, it's a bit harder for me. And it's served me well my way, in the sense that I've worked for startups. So a lot of it is me having to figure things out. But if I would have had those contacts, I did have my small community of network, but it's more organic. I don't actively, like, I get messages now from students on LinkedIn who want to connect and just know what I'm doing, and I will respond back. Um, Especially if you come from my alma mater, I will pick up the call, make that time to let you know and answer your questions and give you any advice I can give you. But personally, that's not something I did. So just I would follow their advice. But if you're not that type of person, it's still okay. You can still succeed. I didn't prepare for law school. I took one writing class, then I took half of my last semester. I was in Spain finishing my Spanish degree, came back, taking Italian. So I was not focused on law or preparing for law. I showed up to law school. It was fine. It would have helped, of course, to probably understand a bit more. But the whole purpose of the first year of law school is teaching you how to think like a lawyer. So as long as you already have that critical thinking mindset and you're open to learning, you should be fine. And just building your community at law school. Um, Once again, when I went to law school, I thought I was going to be defending doctors and clinics. No, I found out that I liked international law. I migrated through entertainment law, um, arbitration, so moot, just going into a lot of different things, clinics, exploring within the law school, kind of where I wanted to be. Um, I would say, yeah, just kind of figuring out my own way. That's the way it worked best for me. Fortunately, I I've liked my career path personally. I've been pretty much in-house my whole career. And I think a lot of people sometimes strive to get there. So I get a lot of questions around that, like, how did you end up? It just happened. I was always open to learning new things, being a generalist, but also specializing in different areas, because I've been a business immigration attorney. I do labor law, policy. So yeah, you can find your way in many different, going through many different paths. It's a lot easier though when you do have a network and when you're willing to reach out. That's something I do admire in a lot of the new generations, where I'm like, wow, I would have never just send this cold email to someone and introduce myself. I get emails, LinkedIn messages, and I'm just like, good for you. We have interns now. I love working with interns. Some are coming from our general college system, some are coming from law schools, and it's just fun trying to help them figure out what is it they want to do in the law and exposing them to different areas.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you all of you for that advice. I don't want to take up too much of people's time, and I don't want to eat up into student Q&A. So I think this is the part where we're going to start. We're going to open up the panel to student questions. So if you have a question, just raise your hand, and then hopefully we'll get to you.
It looks like Shruti put a question in
Mhm.
the chat. If we want to answer that in the same order, or if anybody just wants to answer it, or however you guys want to do it.
I can go ahead and add there, because also just from my law school group, which came after like kind of an economic downturn, that we had one of my good friends from law school came from a successful career in Sony Entertainment and just decided, you know what, this isn't for me. I want to be a lawyer. Now works in the alcohol industry. So it's never late to transition. All you have to do is pick up a book and get ready for the LSAT. That's really what it is. It's a lot easier than transitioning, from trying to become a doctor after the fact, where you actually have specific classes that you need to check off. There's no specific degree you need. So I think it's never late. People come in late. You'll see that at law school. You'll have people just out of college, people who did gap years, people who are actually transitioning in professions.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I had a friend who was a Marine before joining going to law school. I had a friend who had a PhD in biochemistry and decided a little, late that he didn't want to do biochemistry. And then similarly, not only can you switch to law late, because I mean, Jessica was talking about taking her one writing, writing for lawyers class. I took writing for engineers, so I took like zero law classes at all. And it doesn't matter. It just meant that my GPA was lower than other people, but that's because I had hard major. And so that it just like is what it is, and there's nothing you can do about it. But at the same time, you can also switch once you get into law. And so fundamentally, like, though the skills that I have are the same from my last job to this job, which is I'm still litigating, I'm still, doing a bunch of, briefs and motions and oppositions and demands and things like that. But everything's different other than that. Everything I did before was in federal court. Everything I do now is in state court. Everything I did before was on behalf of companies. Everything I do now is on behalf of people. And if your question is a great question, because I did not know that people went from big law into personal injury. And that's because people generally don't. And I know like 5 of us in Los Angeles who have made that switch. And so there's just very few people. But one of the reasons I like speaking on panels like this is because nobody told me that you could do that. And if I knew that you could do that, then who knew? I would have had a very different outlook and a very different, path.
Just to add to all that, I didn't switch. I knew I wanted to be a lawyer when I was little, and here I am. But I'll let you know that it is never too late to chase what you need to chase what you love, to chase what makes you happy, to chase what you're good at. That includes switching careers, that includes switching areas in the law, like Bo had indicated. We have so many different areas that you can completely switch up your practice. You can be advisory, you can be research attorney, you can be a trial attorney, you can be a Class A litigator. There are so many different things. You can teach law school. I taught law school for a couple of years, super fun. So if you say, is it ever too late? No, it's not, even if you're 80. But if you're in your 20s and you're thinking, wow, is it going to be too late if I switch? Switch now. switch now while you're early, while you still have that resiliency, you'll be better for it in the end, always.
Are there any other students in the audience with questions?
I guess I can jump in. Sorry, I was not able to find the raise hand feature on Zoom. This is completely my fault. So, like, well, first of all, thank you guys for speaking tonight. Very good insights and very diverse perspective. I wanted to more so ask about like the application side of things. So, I know like GPA and LSAT like are the big number games and that are like the most two important factors when you're applying to law school. But kind of like learning from your own experience of applying to law school and your peers from law school and now you're in practice, so some of your colleagues, what do you think are some of the most important like qualities or experiences that you think is most valuable to highlight in like the law school application process? And the second part of the question is more so just I'm curious, how do you guys like manage kind of like a work-life balance, especially in an evolving industry, and it's very demanding, I know. But yeah, thank you guys again.
I'll jump in and start. I don't know if I have too much advice on the application side, but I will provide myself as an example and a lot of my friends. I feel like when you are in like pre-law societies or you start applying or you're in law school, there's a lot of focus on grades and numbers and rankings. And even when you're applying, like, oh, how is my law firm ranked? But I will say I had a pretty low GPA because I was pre-med and I really shouldn't have been pre-med, but I got into law school. And I think just getting your foot in the door is the most important part. I didn't go to a top 20 law school. It was good. And I think it had a good alumni network. And so I was able to levy that. I cold emailed, I think, 200 mid-sized firms in San Francisco, probably every single mid-sized firm in San Francisco I emailed, managed to land a job. And I think at the time there was like forums that were saying, oh, if you're not in a top 20 law school, you're not going to be able to get a big law job. I will say at this stage in my career, and I look around at my peers, every single person who wanted to get a big law job is got one or is currently in a big law job. Even people who are like bottom 25% of our class and had to take the bar twice. I really think that people who, if you really want something, you will find a way to be able to get there. And I think the law profession is really difficult. And so, as you progress, there will be, and you stay in law, there will be more and more opportunities. So it might be really difficult right out of law school to land that big flashy job. But if that's what you truly want, or you want to work at a brand name firm, it can definitely happen. So I just know there's so much pressure on the grades and the numbers and the rankings. So I just want to throw that out there. Like my personal experience, I didn't work at a big law firm straight out of law school, but I am now. And so if that's what you want, you can make that happen.
I guess I'll follow in. I'm not sure. Am I the only non-California attorney on this panel? So I might have a little bit of different experience. So I went to law school at UM Law, so out of state. Not necessarily one of the top law firms, top 100. I think it was like in the 50s when I went, but I was more focused on the program and where I wanted to be after. So when it came to applying, I obviously knew the LSAT number I needed based on my GPA. So that does come into play. I wasn't looking for a big law firm job. It does help, obviously, when you get into a top tier school. I have friends who, went to George Washington, so it's a lot easier to land those Sidley Austin, New York jobs. That wasn't what I was looking for. So it's kind of like, what are you trying to position yourself for? There's different law schools that are known for different things, and will open up certain markets for you, especially if you're trying to stay. Like a law degree serves me in Miami. I'm based in Miami. Going back to LA was a challenge. I did go back momentarily, but it's also not going to have a name recognition. I could have went to a lower tier law school in California, and I had probably would open up more opportunities than having this degree that at that point, they weren't very familiar with. I think things are changing in terms of going to law school. I like to believe that people aren't so focused Obviously, if there's an alumni in there, it helps and they're going to look at that. But at least when I'm recruiting and I worked in other fields, I try not to look at it. I've also worked for international companies, so they care a little bit less because they're less familiar with the US legal system. It's very different in Latin America, in Europe, the way it works to become an attorney and take that route. So that's also served me. So I think just kind of knowing where is it that you want to be? Will this law school set you up for that? And maybe you have to take that extra step that if you don't have those grades in GPA, you can't get into one of those top schools, or you don't want to pay to go to one of those top schools, that you can still work your way up to a big law firm job, because they're going to value at the end of the day experience, especially after I think the first 3 years out of law school. Experience matters a bit more than where you've garnered it.
For the application, I'm not sure if the essay is still a part of it, but it was when I applied, and I don't know how closely they look at it besides seeing if you can write, but I think trying to put your story out there, and tell why you want to go to law school and what you're interested in, I think is interesting to people reviewing your application. And then in terms of your second question about work-life balance, I think it's it's hard, especially when you're starting out, because you're trying to work so hard, improve yourself, and you're working long hours. But you do need to prioritize, and depending on your employer, make it known that you need to take your vacation time, or you need to have your one weekend, or whatever it may be. So I think really prioritizing yourself is important when you start your career.
I love the points that have been made so far. Just to add on, like Jessica said, go to school where you want to work. That allows you to start making those connections earlier, and you're not going to have to answer questions about why you went to school in this random city. So I went to school at Emory. I have no connection to Atlanta. I had never been to Atlanta. I had no desire to stay in Atlanta. And I got no interviews in Atlanta because they knew I was from Los Angeles. And they said, we're going to hire you. We're going to train you for 2 years, and you're going to leave and go back to Los Angeles. And I said, no. And they were only wrong because it took 3 years. And so they were right on the money. And so there was no way I was going to get a job in Atlanta, but I chose Emory because they had a very cool intellectual property program. And so going to what Amadi said, I wrote about that in my essay was, hey, you have this program that allows me to basically create a startup while I'm in law school and get credit for it. I'm into that. I really want to do that program. And that's what my essay was about, and that's how I got in, and that's where I chose to go. The other thing I told my sister is that really the only people I've ever seen care about where you went to law school is big law. And that was only for entry level jobs. I went to Emory, which was top 20. It's not now, but when I graduated, it was. And I went to the lowest ranked law school of anybody in my first year class. But I also worked for a guy who went to the University of Kentucky. And he had gone through, like Stacy was talking about, he had gone through different firms and worked his way up, and now he was a partner, at a big law firm. And so really, if you want to work for people, they generally don't care where you went to law school unless it says like Harvard at the top, and then people are generally just like impressed by the word Harvard. But really that's what it comes down to. If you want to do immigration law, do they care about where you went to law school? Generally not. They care whether you want to help them. And that's really, and whether you're competent. And so I wouldn't worry too much about where you go to law school unless you do want one of those jobs or like a federal clerkship. Like those are hard to get and they're competitive, and it just is what it is, right? But at the same time, like if that's not what you want to do, don't worry about it, because it really, like, I did not know until like 3 weeks ago where one of my best friends in law went to law school, because it was just totally irrelevant. He was a really good lawyer, and I learned a ton from him, and it just wasn't relevant where he went to law school at all. And so, and I would say that like two of the biggest baller attorneys that I know went to law schools that don't even exist anymore. And so like it really, really, like it all depends on what it is you want to do. And they're two of the best trial attorneys I've ever seen. And so it really, once you start thinking about it and realizing what's important to you, it will become, I think, a lot clearer in terms of where you want to go or where you want to focus your applications.
I just wanted to add that in my job, I've noticed there's sort of a bias against hiring Ivy League grads. I feel like when we get a resume of somebody from Harvard or Yale, there's sort of like a second like look at like why do you want to be here? Why is it that you want to work in government? There's sort of a preference to hire people who have really demonstrated through their experience that they really live and breathe the values of wanting to do public service. That's going to be true across the board in a lot of public interest jobs, but it doesn't mean that there's not like a disadvantage at all. But it's not at all what I expected of just sort of like where you're the ranking of where you go to school is like the biggest thing. I also went to the University of Miami. It's not a very well-ranked school, but it does have a really great public interest program that I was able to benefit from.
I did want to comment on the work-life balance because I had a really bad burnout experience. So people think just because you're in-house counsel that you like work limited hours, that it's easy compared to big law firm. Not necessarily. Like you still have to take that, you have to balance your own life and say no. So set those boundaries. So, being the only attorney, startup culture, we're at the last company I was operating in 50 plus countries, and I was the only attorney there. So I was dealing with issues, litigation all around the world. You burn out. And it's important that you ask for help, and just be mindful of that. So it's like any other profession. I think in this day and age, we all are trying to prove ourselves, do more. We have all this technology that we're always on, always available. So even like answering phone calls, it's fine to do it, but just understanding where you set those boundaries so that you do have that balance. Like no one's going to do it for you. You have to do it for yourself. And that's something I'm learning to do. And that's part of the reason I took a step down. I was deputy GC. Now I'm leading up the compliance. So I took a step down because I needed that so that I could have that balance in my life. So that's just something to keep in mind. And it's not just the legal profession, it's every profession. People want side hustles. We have this big side hustle culture. It doesn't necessarily work for everyone. So, or maybe not all the time. So just do what kind of makes you happy and find that career path that allows you to have the balance that you need in your life.
And not only are people not going to look after you for it, they're, trying to add more work to your work-life balance. And so like it's just something to keep in mind that they're worried about them, right? And so you've got to worry about you. The only way I got work-life balance was by like finding a new job in a whole new, part of law. And now, this is going to be the latest that I'm here all week. And so but that's not how it was before. And so it's just something to be aware of. Jessica's right on the money.
Yeah, I don't remember my application experience because it was so long ago. I know helping my daughter with college, I stayed out of her writing her essays because again, we wanted her voice to be authentic. And that worked. It worked for her because it had I got in there and said, no, you probably should say this or that. She wouldn't have gotten into where she fits best, which is up at Berkeley. Work-life balance, I'm 58. I don't have it. So develop it when you're young. And don't say, oh, I'm only going to work till 4 today. See you all later when your boss needs you there till 6, because you're going to end up in a disaster if that happens. But don't run yourself thinking that you're irreplaceable, because you are replaceable. It took the pandemic. My ex-husband and my child's father died. Both of my parents died. And 2 of our really close friends died. And then my child had a meltdown because she was homeschooling herself. That's what it took for me to leave my job. When she came up and said, Mom, this job is killing you and I need you more. Because I was working between 14 and 16 hours a day, 7 days a week to keep my government job. Because we had so many child abuse cases coming in and I was the only open courtroom in Orange County. So when you are looking at where to apply, know that you may not get into a top school, and that's okay. Like everybody said, if you do, that's great too. But know that when you're in school, you have to put in that dedication. You're going to be reading hours and hours and hundreds of pages a day. Know that's your work-life balance is going to go out the window while you're in school. Don't say, oh, I'm stopping at 3 because I need to go have pizza. Go ahead and have pizza, but don't stay out all night. But when you do start your career, be mindful. Don't be like me. Be mindful. Don't wait until you're in your 50s to try to find that work-life balance, because you deserve it a lot earlier. Absolutely.
Or come work in the federal government. We have plenty of work-life balance over here.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for the response, for being so open. I definitely had a episode I was doubting myself because, nowadays there's like a big discourse on you had to go to top 14, you had to get a perfect LSAT score or whatever. So I really appreciate the new perspective. I remember I almost gave up law school application when I got a 170 on the LSAT, even though it's a really great score, but it's just people around me give me a lot of pressure. So I really truly appreciate you guys for being so open and providing new perspectives.
No matter what law school you look at, my GPA was below the 25th percentile. Doesn't matter which law school you look at. And so just like it's possible, it's okay, it's gonna be fine.
I think we have time for one more question. Go ahead, Max.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Okay, great. I know we're coming up on time, so I'll keep this pretty short. First of all, thank you all for being here this evening. It's been super informative and I've really appreciated it. You guys kind of already touched on bits and pieces of my question, but it's really kind of about like the job and internship search as an undergrad. I have recently discovered that it is a very overwhelming process, like with LinkedIn and Handshake, and they're throwing like a million different jobs at you. And so I was wondering if you guys had any advice for how to narrow that search. I found like the cold emailing piece of advice to be really helpful because that'll help gain some more insight about what specific types of positions. But, I know that work experience is something that law schools consider. So any piece of advice you might have as an undergraduate student when maybe a lot of law firms are looking to intern law students instead, what types of positions would be beneficial?
I think some general advice is um, in terms of like what specific position or what type of law firm. I don't know what would be the most, I'm trying to think of the term, not gaming the system, or but what would look the best on an application or what would make you most attractive. But I would say that when you do the interviews, I think seeing if you click with the person who's interviewing you is really important. You want to find someone who's like really willing to teach and is generous with their time, because I feel like that's the most important part. Also, someone that you just enjoy being around. Because if you interview with someone and I don't know, maybe if they're at Google, maybe you should take the job. But if they're like, they sound really cool and fancy, but you get into the room with them and they're checking their phone every 3 seconds and they're just sort of like trying to get through the interview, probably not the best type of person to be working for a mentor. And if you have a bad work experience, that might determine like, oh, maybe I'm not so interested in law school or whatever. So I think setting yourself up so you have a good work experience no matter where you're doing the work in is really important. And if you really connect with that person can help you down the line in terms of like, if you're having a rough day at law school, you can call them up and be like, hey, I want to quit, and they can like talk you off the ledge. And then when you're ready to find a job, they will know other people, even if they're not in the specific area of law that you want to be in.
I do remember how hard it was to find undergrad legal internships. So just going to add some concrete examples. I had a lot of friends who did like business affairs type internships that are sort of legal adjacent at different media companies or at Sony, different things like that, where you're most of the people who are working there are not necessarily lawyers, but are doing legal adjacent jobs. I also interned at Inner City Law Center, which is a nonprofit law firm, basically eradicating homelessness. They take a lot of undergrad interns, and I interned with a congressional representative. They also take a lot of undergrad interns, and those aren't like legal jobs, but that was one of the ways of demonstrating like I'm interested in policy work. You also do stuff with like local government, a lot of different things that are legal adjacent things if it's hard to find a legal externship as an undergrad.
Right, like Ashley said, you can use it like if if you are trying to game the system a little bit, or at least trying to demonstrate interest in fields, exactly what Ashley said. My first summer, I worked for the Department of Energy doing patent stuff. with a science background, everybody thought that I wanted to write patents, but that was a little too engineering-y, and that's exactly why I, left engineering. And so I wanted to litigate patents. And so my second summer, rather than taking a job in patents, I worked for the LA District Attorney's Office and did gang murder trials because that was very different, and it made it clear that, like, hey, I'm interested in the whole trial aspect. In terms of getting jobs, not necessarily choosing them, but getting them. Talk to your friends. If they have parents who are lawyers, I can tell you that I have multiple friends who have interned at my parents. Well, actually, at my current law firm, and that was their first legal job was because their friends' parents were lawyers. And so, and like, talk to your friends, and their parents might be lawyers, and willing to help out, or your parents' friends, or like again, you're at USC. Like this is the networking. It's not what you know, it's who you know. You just got to be above the threshold. You got to do good. You got to be good enough. And so in all of those ways, like if you think outside the box, but exactly like Ashley said, nonprofits are always looking for help. And so whether it's the legal center, or I'm sure you could intern at like the ACLU, or just different things like that that will demonstrate interest in what it is that you want to do, or teach you that you don't want to do it. And at the same time, beef up your resume a little bit in terms of if that's the kind of stuff you want to be doing.
I would also suggest that if you have classes that you're very interested in and you like your professors, go up and talk to them. Make sure they know who you are. Make sure that they know who your face is. And sometimes they have either projects or side gigs that are happening during the summer that you could pick up, because it's kind of hard. When you're in law school, you can be certified as a law clerk and do the prelims and the trials. When you're in college, it's a little bit different, so it's kind of harder to pick somebody up. Also, I know that the Children's Law Center in Los Angeles and Harold LaFlamme's office in Orange County often take college level internships. So look online, follow leads down, chase whoever you if you run into somebody and you like what they do, ask them if there's any openings anywhere. I've actually managed to get a couple of college students internships with people that don't do anything what I do, but I just asked around because I said there are these two great kids and they need something to do for the summer, and we managed to fit them into law firms. Not doing legal work, they were doing a lot of copying, a lot of process serving, things that were not law, but law adjacent, as everybody had mentioned. But make sure that you're open enough to ask. Just say, hey, can anybody help me with this? Does anybody have any leads? It's hard. It's hard putting yourself out there. It really is. And just to follow up, I didn't do any legal work during my college. I was a bartender. So I had to make money, and that was the fastest way to make money. So that's what I did. But times have changed.
Great. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it.
And that'll conclude the Q&A section of the panel, as we're running short on time. A few announcements from the Career Center, just to wrap it up. Industry Insights, we're going to do more panels in the spring. There's a list of the different topics that we're going to cover. So we're really looking forward to those and hope you'll join us there. Internship SC is one of our programs. The Government Legal and Policy, as you can see on the right, is having their first session next week. So if you want to connect with peers that are also interested in law or government or policy work, then that's a great place to network with peers. The Career Center also hosts Trojan Talks, so those are great ways to talk with employers and get to know what they do straight from the source. And then, of course, the Spring Career Fair is happening in February, so that's something to look forward to.